Hello everybody, this is Rascal here with my life recoup Boneshatter Juggernaut that converts all the life regeneration from Juggernaut into rage generation with the Count Spirit gloves. The reason for this was to have a build that's kind of in between the two main takes on Boneshatter that I see, which are you've got some that go with a little bit lower trauma stacking just to have it, and then the others on the opposite end that then go all in on defense. They super ramp up and eventually hit 300 stacks or whatever, and they have temp chains, and then eventually they just explode everything with their massive trauma stacks. But what I wanted was a build that was quick moving and abused the new Calm Spirit gloves here to have high uptime on Berserk. Berserk is great because it gives me everything I could want, really. It is more attack speed, more damage, increased attack speed, less damage taken. It's wonderful. I love it. But I don't like getting rid of all my rage to use it, and I wanted to basically have so much rage that it never mattered when I pressed the button. So by stacking up my trauma, I get rage generation, which sustains the berserk, which gives me more attack speed, which means more trauma stacks. It creates this lovely little feedback loop. It's wonderful. Some key parts of the build is I've got a replica Wings of Entropy. This is a two-handed axe that counts as dual wielding, so it alternates between a main hand and offhand hit. Personally, I just really love the attack animation too. It just looks so sick. But the important thing is the main hand is fast, the offhand has high crit chance. Those are both things that are very powerful here because it means I get more trauma quickly from the main hand, and then the offhand has a high base amount of crit chance, which means very minimal crit investments required to actually see that pay dividends. Case in point, I'm running a crit damage support jewel in here because it works. I have so much crit chance, I don't need to worry about it. The other essentially unique is a replica soul tether that gives me a chunk of life as energy shield and corrupted soul, which corrupted soul makes it so that half of non-chaos damage will bypass my energy shield, but then I gain 15% of my maximum life as maximum energy shield. This is great because I'm going to be hitting myself so hard that I'm going to be nuking all of my energy shield anyway, so I don't care. But more importantly, when energy shield takes damage, you still recoup it as life. So the higher my energy shield is relative to my life bar, the more efficient my life recoup becomes. It basically acts as a more multiplier on all my life recoup. Which, speaking of, I have life recoup on my rings. 18% from Fertile Catalyst here, 18% on the other ring. I actually anoint the infused flesh for another 18%. And then my body armor uses its implicits to get more generic life recoup and life recovery rate. And the reason why life recovery rate's good is it's another multiplier on my recoup. My helmet then has physical damage only as life recoup, which is fine because most damage that I take will be physical. I also take some damage as elemental because as a Juggernaut, I apply some of my armor to elemental damage from hits. So for those of you who aren't aware, armor is more effective against smaller hits. The bigger the hit, the less percent mitigation you're actually going to get out of your armor. And by turning some of it into fire and some of it into lightning, all of those fractions, I have more effective mitigation against each of them. So it creates this like really nice compound effect of even more mitigation. So lovely, wonderful. Untiring makes it so that I've got all that life regen that I talked about that enables it. I took Unstoppable so that I can't be crowd controlled, which just makes it easier to build up stacks. Undeniable gives me just a lot of flat attack speed and also makes it really easy to deal with hit cap. because I am honestly stretched pretty thin on my passives, so I wanted something to like the more things that give me a strong floor, the better. Jewels wise, because this build is a pure fire build, I do run Secrets of Suffering from the interrogation to get Scorch to lower enemy resistances. And one thing that you may see from my tree is I don't have any attack masteries. A lot of people are saying that melee is going to feel bad to play next league because of the removal of the 30% further away strike distance. I honestly never used it. I honestly run so fast that I couldn't care less, honestly. Between Rage and Berserk and movement speed on boots, I have a ton of movement speed, so I just run at things and kill them. So what I'm going to do is a run of the Shaper, so that you guys can see how the build functions in a boss setting, as well as going from pack to pack. One thing to keep in mind, your Rage does reset every time you zone in, and when you are in the invuln period, it also shuts off the Camp Spirit regen. Due to some technical issues, I have actually done this a couple times, so this should hopefully not be super embarrassing for me. But as you can see, I'm at like 40 stacks pretty much immediately. And there are so many things that you can do to further optimize this build. So I'm actually going to deliberately wait so that my Berserk wears off. Because one weakness this build has is downtime means no more rage. Like, as you can see, like, even though I've been out of combat for a decent bit of time, my rage still stayed pretty full for a while. Go ahead and pop this. And yeah, I mean, basically, once the benefit of this build is I'm gonna unequip my gloves to nuke my rage. So one benefit is it just has, like, the first couple seconds of the fight kind of suck. They're a little iffy. You do have to worry about, you know, dots being pretty dangerous because the Recoup engine hasn't fully engaged. I do things that compensate for it, such as I have the Overleech. But once it gets going, oh buddy. So one thing that's going to be very important is next league, this build actually is getting nerfed. One of the things that scales my damage up is Mantra of Flames, which is how it interacts with Boneshatter is very unintuitive, but absolutely needed to be removed from the game. If anyone says that Mantra of Flames was perfectly fine, they are objectively lying to you because they didn't want it to be nerfed. It has some complications. Every single trauma stack counts as a separate buff. Yeah, it's not one buff of trauma. It's just, oh, it's ridiculous. And then it gets better. Fortify works the same way. Oh, this was way too early on my Berserk. This might be a mistake. Yeah, it was a mistake. I'm gonna have a slower ramp up here, which is fine. And yeah, like you can see, it was a little sketchy because I had messed up my initial ramp. If I hadn't done that, that would have been a very smooth Shaper Beam tank. But one thing to keep in mind about this build is it is vulnerable to dots. because all of armor doesn't work on damage over time effects, which means they get to do pretty much full damage to me at all times. I actually highly recommend running the Soul of Arakali, I think. Yeah, it's Arakali. I always get Shikari and Arakali confused. Why did Sin have to name his daughter after his ex-wife? But yeah, by taking the Soul of Arakali, I get a nice big chunk of reduced damage over time effect, which is very handy for staying alive. Again, I'm going to abuse Grace Period to zero out my rage. Perfect, awesome. Other thing I could have done was walk up, unequip the gloves. There are more efficient ways to play that I am not pursuing right now because I am out of practice. So this attack right here is probably the biggest like weakness of this build. It's an attack where I cannot attack, I have to avoid damage, and then ramp up from zero. Because I'm out of combat, my berserk goes off, or turns off. But yeah, as you play this build, you start getting a better feel for when you can and cannot tank certain dot effects that are telegraphed, like the Shaper Beam. Like right now, I'm sitting on like 75 stacks. I have so much life regen. Like Shaper Beam doesn't, I don't even care anymore, because I've got something like several thousand energy shield regen per second from all the damage I'm mitigating. But yeah, you basically play the build like Headhunter. You want to go fast. You don't want to let like when you're actually like clearing packs, you want to jump in, hit them a couple times, which kills pretty much all of them, and then go on to the next one. What you don't want to do is you don't want to like take your time between pulls and things. So what I'll end up doing is I will run around till I find a league mechanic that I want to do. Let my rage drop off because I'll be out of combat, looting things, and then I'll go in and grab the league mechanic that I want to do. Prime example of this is like sorry, I had to concentrate for a second there. Legion. Oh, that was just unfair. So there, I probably what I should have done was back off and just let the beam happen. But I was trying to greet it by trying to stack up my trauma on him while his clone was doing his thing. So it is still very possible to die as this build. It has its moments of tankiness, but it's not perfect. You do need to ramp up the regeneration. And if you don't, you will be punished for it. But like as you can see here, like that time it was just fine. I didn't even care. Also, I've gotten like 7 of these and 1 of the other, and I'm getting sick of it. So, yeah, that's the idea. I wanted to show off the strengths, weaknesses. You do still need to pay attention to what you're doing. You can't just face roll it. As you saw, I did something dumb trying to greed out the extra stacks, and I died for it. So yeah, I enjoy it for a league starter. You have to league start as like Karn's build. Can't do this take on it until minimum level 69 because of the level requirements of the gloves. And you also have to have enough recoup items set aside so that when you do switch into this, you don't just splat yourself. When I first got into this, I ran a lot of jewels like this one where I had like I think 4 of them going at the same time, plus the rings, plus the necklace. But I was silly and I forgot that the replica soul tether existed. So I was trying to mitigate everything on life, and that was a terrible idea. Don't do that. Learn from my mistakes. Go straight to replica soul tether if you're going to try this build. Now, I detail what my changes for 3.2, or sorry, 3.20 is going to be in one of my posts on Reddit. I'm going to link both the original draft and the updated version in the description. But Mantra of Flames isn't going to drop in 320, so you have to get your damage by stacking more trauma, which means a higher quality of Boneshatter, which is going to necessitate either a Ashes of the Stars or a level 4 Enhance. What I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to probably go straight into 60% quality by making another character be my league starter and then make this character once I have a decent amount of cash lying around. But the idea is we'll just have to rely on ramping even faster to compensate for the damage loss. So yeah, that is the build. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you like the concept of it. I had a lot of fun playing it, and honestly, like, when I run at this speed and have leap slams like this, I cannot tell you how little I care about losing the 30% range. It's just non-existent as far as I'm concerned, because I still have to click on people. I'm still going to run at them super fast and deal with it. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody.